Good evening and welcome to the Township of Woolwich Special Council meeting on July 16th, 2024. And we have a full house here today. I think most of them are for one of our public meetings. So welcome. It's nice to see a lot of people in the chambers. We haven't seen that too many times since we've been back since COVID, which it's nice. And welcome to anyone watching on YouTube. I'm going to start with a roll call of council. I, Mayor Shantz, am present and chairing this meeting. Councillor Bryant.
Present.
Councillor Cadeau.
Present.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor Schmidt.
Present.
And Councillor Burgess sends his regrets. I'll start by acknowledging the land on which we live has been here from time immemorial and that Indigenous people have lived here from time immemorial. I thank the Chinatan, also called the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people who have lived here and cared for this land and who continue to share and steward this land with us. May we together learn to care for each other, our flora and fauna, and the land that sustains us. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, we will start with our public meeting. And I have a little statement to read. The following portion of the meeting is for information only, and no decisions will be made tonight. Any questions can be directed to Development Services staff following the meeting. I declare the public meeting to be open, and we will start with DS 25-2024. This is a zone change with 881, excuse me, Weber Inc. and 881 Weber Street North. Planner Sherwin Maloney. Or do I? Am I starting with you or with Jeff? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam
ahead.
Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. The lands being proposed are approximately 16.3 hectares. Oh, before I start, I just need to share my slide. Perfect. Okay, so yeah, the lands being proposed are approximately 16.3 hectares and are located at 881 Weber Street North, just west of the Stockyard Settlement at the corner of Lobsinger and Apple Grove Road. The planning partnership on behalf of the property owner have submitted a zone change application for 881 Weber Street North. The subject lands are zoned agricultural A and are situated in the protected countryside prime agricultural area. The applicant is proposing a site-specific zone change to permit an agricultural related use. The use will include the following: an orchard processing operation, an agricultural research and training center, a farm produce store, and farm labor accommodations. Staff will continue to work with the applicant, the public where possible, and provide a report back to council after all topics have been addressed. Please note the planning consultant is in attendance for questioning, and staff is also available for any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Maloney? No, I'm not seeing any. We also have the consultant for the applicant, Brandon Simon of the Planning Partnership. Welcome.
Good evening. I'll just try to share my presentation as well. So good evening, members of council, members of the public, and township staff. My name is Brandon Simon, and I'm an associate with the Planning Partnership. Pleased to be here tonight to speak briefly to the zoning bylaw amendment application for 881 Weber Street. I'll keep my remarks fairly brief and leave time at the end for any questions that you might have. So the subject site located a very unique, I'd say, agricultural urban interface. Part of the site proper overall is within the stockyards area. The rest is within the agricultural area, but also within proximity to the city of Waterloo as well as to St. Jacobs. So very unique area, lends itself well to a more productive agricultural use, especially one that has somewhat of a tourism element associated with it. The site itself, 14 hectares of it were planted in 2018 for a mix of different, a mixed fruit orchard, including plums, apples, pears, and apricots. The orchard's still maturing, but is already producing a very healthy and robust harvest. And that's only going to continue to grow as the orchard matures. There's a dramatic need for on-site facilities to provide storage facilities for farm equipment, for the produce itself, to provide some on-site value retention for cleaning, cooling, packing, etc., as well as for on-site farm worker accommodation for workers who work on the farm, because none of those facilities are currently on the site. In terms of the immediate context around the site, you'll see that in the middle of the orchard was an area that was intentionally set aside at time of planting to accommodate just these uses within a clustered arrangement, which is exactly what the township's official plan is looking for. Other adjacent uses include a garden center to the northeast, the Martin family fruit farm to the west across Apple Grove, light industrial commercial uses further to the west, and then some other agricultural and rural residential uses to the south, west, and north. And this is just an aerial view of the site showing the orchard to the west and east, and that central area that I mentioned is where these proposed agricultural and agriculture related uses are going to be located and are subject to this zoning bylaw amendment application. And just another image, area C is where we're proposing the agriculture related uses. So that's the storage, packing, processing, etc., repair of the farm equipment. And then area D is where we're proposing permanent and temporary farm help accommodation. And we've been working with township staff to craft the zoning bylaw to specify that the inhabitants of that accommodations are just to work on that farm. That's the intention here, is just to provide on-site accommodation for workers who are going to be working on this orchard as it continues to mature. So these are the specific uses that are being proposed as Sherwin previously mentioned. So the orchard processing operation, including those uses that are mentioned there, as well as an agricultural research and training center to research different varieties of apples, pears, plums, etc., and figure out what works best in this climate, along with the farm help accommodations as well as a fruit store. And these will all be centrally located in that area that was set aside, as I mentioned and shown earlier. This will provide a number of significant benefits to the existing orchard, really enhancing productivity of the site itself, as well as the broader agricultural productivity within the township. It utilizes an area that was set aside from the existing orchard, so minimal, if any, impacts on the existing orchard, and will also maintain that picturesque orchard character along Lobsinger Line and Apple Grove Road. The farm store will help support economic and tourism activity, especially so close to the stockyards. And with this, there'll be another potential spin-off benefits for other farms and agricultural facilities in the township. That's really all I have to say today and present today, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if you have any or would like any additional information.
Thank you, Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to the delegate. I noticed there was one property that was left out of the study. Could you tell us why they weren't included? It was, I think, next door.
To clarify, I had not left out of the study. We did kind of a broader, review of the context of the area, and obviously acknowledge that there are other agricultural, rural, residential properties in the area, and then acknowledge that there was a comment letter submitted on this application, and actually the applicant met with the commenter last night for a good 30 minutes. Most of the comments relate to the kind of the operations of the orchard, and so there will be some ongoing discussions about refining those operations and open lines of communication. The owner knows the commenter quite well, and so they weren't left out of the study, but we didn't highlight it on this because obviously the agricultural, rural residentials, I would say, is the kind of the predominant context of the area. So we're just highlighting some of those unique aspects instead.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you. I'm wondering, just more or less the size of the research facility. That's the only thing that kind of stood out to me as kind of out of the ordinary on this application. Is it like a large building that's going to be put in? Is it somewhat small? I'm just trying to get a visual of what that would look like.
Sure, and through the mayor, it's going to be integrated kind of above the fruit store. So the fruit store is going to be kind of like a two-story agricultural building located at the front end of the cluster. We've done some work with township staff about kind of orienting where that's all going to go. So there'll be some parking up there. It'll be easy for public to get to. And so it'll basically just be in some mezzanine space above the fruit store, supporting, a few desks and things like that. Nothing big. You probably wouldn't even know it was there unless you actually went in and walked up to the mezzanine.
Anything else? My question might actually be for staff. Is this part of is there a swap with some of the commercial land to make this happen, or is this just a change on this particular property?
A swamp. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, at sometimes if we change the use on a property, we've gone through process where we've swapped it for another property. So like the commercial that's in the blue on Weber Street, that's part of this whole development, right? Are they like, is some of this being moved to the second site that should be on the commercial part? Can you just clarify that?
Yeah, so the blue part is in the urban settlement. That the zoning there is ST2, so it allows for more commercial industrial business. Where they're proposing the actual orchard processing operations is mainly agricultural. So it's not really a swap. It's okay. It's still agricultural related because it's part of the orchard itself. But in terms of it being labeled an industrial commercial, that's something myself and staff and the applicant is going to hash out when it comes to crafting the zoning, the zoning bylaw.
And maybe the one thing I'll quickly add is this area. I don't know, you can see my little hand. That's actually very helpful. So that's the area of the sites that's located within the stockyards area. And so that's subject to an approved site plan application for an industrial commercial building. So that's a separate application that the applicant is moving forward with. And as Sherwin mentioned, what's proposed in the cluster here is strictly the agricultural related uses to support the orchard.
Thank you. Anything else? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Through you to the applicant. Are you going to be using Apple Grove Road as your exit from the property, or are you going to go directly out to Lobsinger Line?
Yeah, great question. So right now there are existing driveways to Apple Grove and Lobsinger. And so the initial plan was, we'll just maintain the driveways. As part of the application, township staff asked that we look at and evaluate just kind of the safety of using those accesses in terms of curves and bumps in the road and whatnot. And what was discovered is that on Apple Grove Road, it's actually only acceptable as an incoming entrance only, whereas Lobsinger Line, there is no restriction whatsoever in terms this is strictly from a safety perspective. So the intention here is that Apple Grove would just be kind of an accessory backup option that would probably frankly rarely if ever be used. Almost all traffic will be directed to Lobsinger Line. I mean, from there it's much better connected to Weber Street and everything else anyways. So Apple Grove is really just kind of a backup existing driveway that I don't think is going to see much activity at all.
Okay, because Apple Grove is a gravel road, if I'm correct. Jared would be able to answer that, but I'm just concerned about destroying that road if we're maintaining it. Yeah. Half of it's paved. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Castill.
Just while we're on the topic of traffic, sorry, my chair is squeaking. It's driving me crazy. The report from staff indicates that there's a traffic impact brief. Is that different than a traffic study? Like, what's the difference between a brief and a study? Can you provide some context, I guess.
Mr. Maloney?
A brief, really there's no difference in my opinion. Like it still does an analysis of the traffic in the area.
Yeah, in this case, it was scoped kind of based on the request of township staff. So the primary focus was on kind of the safety aspects of those existing driveways and the proposed driveways. At the same time, because of kind of the acknowledgement of the safety restriction with Apple Grove Road, as well as the limitations of its use, given that it's half gravel, half not. There was also some analysis in there in terms of where is the actual vehicular use going to go, and the conclusion is that virtually everything will go to Lobsinger line. So it was certainly more scoped than a traffic impact study you'd see for a large development project as an example, but it was scoped based on what township staff was looking for in terms of the technical study.
Councillor Grant?
Thank you. This may be a question for Jared, but is there any plans in the future for paving the rest of that road, or have we explored at all completing that road with the applicant, perhaps providing some assistance?
Through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Grant. So there's no immediate plans for any remediation work on Apple Grove Road. Certainly, we're always open if the applicant would desire to pave Apple Grove Road. We wouldn't say no, but I don't believe there are any plans in our capital forecast for that. No.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions for council. Deputy Clerk Smith, are there any unregistered participants?
There are no unregistered participants in the meeting tonight.
Thank you. And is there anyone in the public gallery who wants to speak to this issue? Last call. Okay, seeing none, then we will move on to our next report. Thank you, Mr. Simon. And you're free to stay or go, but I see you want to go.
I'll leave room for everybody else to get a little bit closer.
Okay, and the next report is DS 27-2024, information report on official plan amendment and zone change for Trinity United Church, 21 Arthur Street North and 4 Cross Street, Elmira. And I expect that is why most of you are here. So we will start with Director of Infrastructure Services, Dan Fries. Ms. Fries.
Thank you. So I'll just give a very quick overview because I imagine the consultant will want to speak as well. The property at 21 Arthur is Trinity United Church. They had previously applied for an application which would allow 127 units per hectare. This application that you have in front of you here for a public meeting will allow a mixed-use development with a density of 168 units per hectare, which equates to 52 apartment units. And the mixed use would be the place of worship. So that's a 6-story building, place of worship, and 1 unit on the first floor, 4 floors of apartment units, and then amenity, indoor and outdoor space on the top 6th floor. They're also requesting reduced parking requirements. So just to give you a very brief overview, and I'll hand it over to the consultant if they want to speak.
Before we do that, are there any questions for Ms. Fries? No. Seeing none is okay. Thank you. Valerie Schmidt of GSP Group is here.
That's correct.
Here you are. You're online.
Yes, I am.
And I see there's some other names on here. 2 of them are in the audience, but Alex Brogantz and Ian Huff, who are also here. And I saw Cheryl Fisher come in, so I think she's not online. And Peter Kupfer is here as well in person. So go ahead, Ms. Schmidt.
Sure. Thank you. As you know, we had previous approvals on this site before, but what the owner would like to do now is to allow a 6-story mixed-use development, and we would be adding additional 12 rental apartments to the site. So there'd be 52 apartment units plus 1 studio on the main floor. The final story, the top story would be used for indoor and outdoor amenity space for the residents in the building. I think it's kind of exciting that this development would be coming to the core in Elmira. Providing this form of housing is vital for several reasons. It provides essential accommodation options for a diverse and growing population, which you're probably experiencing. This includes young professionals, families, and for those that just want to age in place in Elmira. It gives them an opportunity to downsize. The location is optimal. It's close to transit, parks, shopping, and other urban services. Additionally, having additional residents in the core is going to foster a vibrant community, and it's going to support all the local businesses in the area as well. Providing rental housing offers flexibility for individuals and families who may not be ready to purchase a home, ensuring that the housing market in the area remains accessible and inclusive to all. So the proposed development will introduce a mid-rise density to the area while maintaining sensitivity to the neighbors or the neighborhood's character. And this is through high quality architectural design. We really want to enhance the public realm and promote natural surveillance. So we have incorporated step backs and other materials and other design features to really create that pedestrian feel when walking down the street. It's not going to feel overwhelming within the core. As Diane had mentioned, the total parking requirement for the site is 65 spaces. It's 53 for the residential component and 12 spaces for the church. We are proposing a slight reduction to 57 parking spaces, so the site will be deficient by 8 spaces. Those 8 spaces will be subject to the township's cash and lieu policy. We've done a traffic brief, and it has been concluded that there isn't any anticipated impacts to the surrounding area. Church services are normally held on Sunday mornings, and at that time, there's usually available on-street parking available in the core, so we don't foresee any issues. Overall, we think it's a great opportunity. It's located in the right site for a mid-rise density development. We're going to be adding, 53 residential units to the area. We think it's compatible. It's in conformity with the township's design and landscape guidelines and the Elmira core area study. So for all these reasons, we think this is a great opportunity for the community. It's appropriate, and we're in support. So on that note, I do have some team members here that we can answer any questions that council has, or anyone from the public that they might have.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have questions? Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. I'm not sure who could answer this, but does Trinity Church run any programs throughout the week other than their Sunday services? I'm just concerned about the parking issue, because if they're running, I don't know, programs midweek, where are we going to park the cars if we've only got a very tight number of spots?
Who can answer that? Cheryl? Hi. Flip the mic. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mayor Shantz and councillors. It's been a while since I've been in front here. Yeah, I do want to talk just briefly a little bit about parking. I'm actually also a resident, right? I live like half a block away from the church. So I'm directly behind Cross Street. Trinity, since its inception, has always used for parking the main street, William Street, Arthur Street, the large parking lot that's across the road. Since 1964 is our church inception, that has been our parking area. I know I'm maybe going to go off a little bit here. I noticed that there was some concern in regards to Cross Street parking. Right now, that street is parking only on one side. The maximum amount of modest-sized cars that you could put on that street is 7. Currently, local residents use at least 4 of those spots. So I just want to address the cross-street issue. We're talking maybe 3 parking spots, keeping in mind that Gale Presbyterian many years ago had no parking and everyone parked in that area and on the streets. So for us during the week, again, we do have, there can be book clubs. We used to have Boy Scouts, some Cubs, Weight Watchers meetings, things of that sort we used to have in the past when the facility was larger. We are looking at working with not-for-profit organizations that require space. But again, we will be doing exactly what we've always done, use space on Arthur Street, William Street, and the large parking lot across the road. It's something our church at a larger size and in a busier state did with minimal concerns and implications. So I just sort of want to draw a little bit of history since 1964 of how the parking has been. Also too, in regards to parking to the building, when I recently retired from Qantas Transit, which is a specialized service here, I want to address the specialized transit because I think a lot of times we forget how many times people living in an apartment are not going to ask to have a car to park. When I left the transit, I took on a role as a part-time church administrator for Trinity, knowing that we were moving into this development. I'm very excited about it. We have taken, in the last few days, I've taken 13 phone calls. Of those 13 phone calls with requests to be added to the list, 3 of those had no vehicles. That's a 24% factor, and it's been a couple of days. So you can see that cars and parking, although every single one of us are able-bodied, we pick up the keys in the morning, we go where we want to go. Lots of people, we have a demographic out there that wants to live in this building and doesn't have cars. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention as an actual fact of what's just occurred in the last little while.
Okay. Thank you. Does someone know how many parking spaces the church has now? No? Okay.
Through you, Mayor.
Yeah,
I could probably find that answer for you. In our previous application, we had noted that. I might just have to get back to you on that.
it's not a large parking lot. I
No.
know that, but
Yeah.
I just wondered if anyone knew. Councillor Schmidt.
This is more in the idle curiosity department. I'm curious on the proposed design. There's 1 residential unit on the main floor. Curious the thought process on why 1 on the bottom floor versus another mixed use.
That's the studio, I think, this studio apartment. Ms. Schmidt, can you speak to that?
It's my understanding that may be for one of the church members to reside in. Maybe members of the church could confirm, but I believe that is the intent.
Mr. Kipfer, can you speak to the studio on the main floor?
Thank you, Mayor. From what I understand, what we're looking at is possibly renting, the church renting that studio which is right beside us, beside the church. So that's probably the use we will use. One other thing I want to add on the parking side, I have spoken with Stefan at Shoppers Drug Mart, and he has indicated that if we need extra parking, he would allow it at the north side of the parking lot there, which is abutting the building.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. Anyone else? No? Is there anyone, well, I guess I should ask Deputy Clerk Smith if there are any unregistered participants.
There are no unregistered participants in the meeting tonight.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the gallery who would like to speak to this? Go ahead. Oh.
My name is Metz, Joseph Metz. I run a little business called Elmira Bag and Burlap on Arthur Street, 27 to 29. And I've had many occasions in the past where I've had to call the police because people parked right in front of my door and I couldn't get my trucks out. So with this shortage of parking coming on, I keep wondering, will that happen again over and over? Because some people don't care where they park. As long as there's an empty spot, they'll park there, and I've had to call the police. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Warren, welcome.
Good evening, and thank you. On behalf of through Mayor Shantz, I just wanted to express our support, or my support, for this development. I've been a member of Trinity United Church for 25, 30 years now. And our congregation had this vision. We've been working on this project for over 10 years now, knowing that down the road, eventually our congregation would probably get a bit smaller in that, and the upkeep of the building would be too much to continue on with. So we actually started this vision 10 years ago, and we've worked closely with the developers to try and help them understand our needs. But as a congregation, what we also wanted to give back to the community. And the housing is the one big thing that we think is important. I personally can tell you, I know 3 senior citizens that have all moved out of Elmira because they could not find somewhere to live. They could find basement apartments that they weren't comfortable in, or other apartments where they'd be on maybe the 2nd or 3rd floor with no elevator, and they were expected to go up and down stairs on a regular basis, which just didn't work for them. So, you know, having another option within the 4 stories, the 52 apartments with an elevator, I think gives us a great opportunity to keep some of our citizens in Elmira. So 3 individuals that have left, they're no longer shopping with businesses in Elmira. So there's lost opportunities there. And all 3 of them are very upset about having to leave Elmira. They wanted to stay in Elmira, but just didn't have an option. So I think that is one big thing as a community, our church community wanted to do, is give options for people to still stay in Elmira. The other thing is, as a church, we could have made the option of just selling the property, relocating somewhere else, building somewhere else. But we, as a congregation, still want to be in the heart of Elmira, and we want to do things with the citizens of Elmira and give back. So, you know, whether it's, you know, a community can dine program where we invite people for a free meal once in 1 month a night. We've did that in the past, and we've had like 50, 60, 70 people show up. And believe it or not, only about 10 of them actually drove. Most of the others walked. So there is a need for things like that. So again, we want to work with other nonprofits or other organizations in the community and make our space available to them and give back to the community overall. So that is, you know, we want to be part of the community. We want to be in the heart of the community. And we've worked closely with the developer to help ensure our space meets those needs, but also that the building is appropriate for Elmira. And yes, it will be a bit higher than we're used to. And yes, there might be a little less parking than people would want, but it's a wonderful piece of property to make good use of. It saves us growing outside of the outskirts of Elmira and continuing to use up farmland. Let's do some infill and make something available for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this?
Hello, Mayor Shantz and council members. My name is Perry Martin. I live at 2 Cross Street, which would be directly beside the Trinity property. I'm not here today to say I would be against this building at all. I think that's great that we're bringing affordable housing and density to the area, but I would be here to say that parking probably will be an issue. Being there every day, I see the streets of Cross Street full, the downtown full already. And yeah, that would be my only issue. I also own the property on, be called 18 Church Street, which is a vacant lot at this point, and would just be concerned that being vacant most of the time would be pretty appealing to park in, but when needed, it may become a problem. Once again, parking, I'm all for the development of the property, but being a resident there, I do see the problem every day. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Mayor Shantz and council members. I'm Reverend Sue Campbell, and I'm the minister at Trinity United Church. And I just have to say what an incredible vision this is. So I've been serving there for 8 years. So the process started before I came. I was initially called to the church for 3 years to see the project through. So here we are in year 8, and still the enthusiasm for this kind of project has sustained us through this time. Theologically, a church is made up of members who all bring their gifts to the community. It's not just, we're not here to serve ourselves. We're here to worship together, yes, and to encourage one another, and to reach out to the wider community. So the kinds of things that you've been hearing about, we've been a supporter, for instance, just back in June of Elmira Pride. We have supported, you heard about the Community Can Dine and other community organizations. And so I know that different municipalities and regions have different levels of parking depending on, like if you go to Waterloo or Kitchener, they have X number of parking spaces per X number of people. And, you go to Toronto and we're hearing, decreasing limits available for parking. So, we're a small congregation. There's about 40 people on a Sunday morning. So, it's not like there are hordes coming, but I think it's important to keep in mind the wider vision. And so, maybe from time to time there will be an issue with parking, but the benefits of having the church in the heart of the community, living within a sustainable footprint and making contributions, I think outweighs other concerns. So thank you.
Anyone else? I'm not seeing anyone else. I wonder if I could ask Ms. Schmidt, most of the discussion's been around parking. Is there any room for additional parking, or I kind of assume if there was, it would be in there, but I wonder if you can speak to that at all.
Yes, through you, Mayor Shantz. We actually think that a full traffic study wasn't required. They don't anticipate a lot of movements during peak hours. It didn't even warrant a full traffic study. We really do think the synergy between when church members aren't there, that those spots can be used as visitor parking. And when the church is in service, typically a Sunday morning, you're not going to have a lot of visitors coming to the building. We've kind of detailed this into the TIS that's available to review in more detail. And I'm not the traffic expert either, but I'm just trying to summarize as best I can. But knowing that there's flexibility for when the church isn't using the parking spaces, it can be dedicated to, additional residential parking and offset, when visitors aren't there, that the parking may be utilized by the church members, if that makes sense.
I think there's only 4 spots allocated to the church. Did I do my math correctly?
There is 12 spaces we're deficient by 8 spaces. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? Okay, then there being no further speakers, I declare the public meeting to be closed, and we will wait for the final staff report on this, which is coming when, Ms. Fries?
Well, as soon as we can get it, I would say probably September. We're aiming for September.
Okay. I see some puzzled looks.
Yeah, we'll try our best to get it here as soon as possible. We've only got 2 meetings in August, but and we're in July already, so we'll try to get it as quickly as possible back to council.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We'll give you a moment to to clear unless you want to stay for the rest of the meeting. Okay, on the consent agenda tonight, we have 1 item for approval and 1 item for information and public notice. To clarify, the item for information and public notice is the special council meeting scheduled for July 30th is not required and therefore it has been canceled. So just to note that. Before we pass a motion approving the items, does anyone on council wish to remove anything for further discussion? No, a motion on the consent agenda, then Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Schmidt, all those in favor, that's carried. Thank you. We've been asked if we can change the order of the staff reports and move 5.4 ahead so that Clayton Lovell can present and head home. So unless unless anyone on council objects to that, we will start with 5.4 tender award for the 2024 paving program. Council okay with that? I'm not seeing anybody jumping up and down, so go ahead, Mr. Poupet.
Thank you, Mayor Shantz, and through you to members of council. First off, I'd like to introduce Clayton Lovell to the Township of Woolwich, and he has his very first report on. We waited for Clayton to come to the township with our paving program. So this is a little bit later than normal. It's smaller. I would remind council that through budget deliberations, we did reduce our annual paving program. We reduced it by about $2.6 million. Much smaller program here, but still important work. So introduce Clayton. You will see more of Clayton going forward and his first foray into township business here with this report. I'd like to draw council's attention to the tender award. We had another competitive process. The split between first and second was just under 9%. That's good. And we had some usual suspects. So again, happy to see that there were more than one bidder and then it was a competitive process. The unfortunate side of that is, despite our best efforts, we were under budget and there is a bit of a deficit here to the tune of about $70,000. So I want to also draw council's attention to that. And there is a recommendation here that we council authorize the deficit to be funded from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. And I can confirm that there is sufficient funds available to offset this deficit. The 3 programs or the 3 projects that we're looking to do is to improve motorist safety on Glasgow Street South in Conestoga. There is some work to do around the bend. We have continual washouts, that is ongoing maintenance and operation issues we're going to take care of, as well as install guide rail there. So that would be one project. The other one is the surface works for Industrial Drive. That work was done 2 years ago. That is common practice. We typically wait 2 years after a full reconstruction before applying the surface course asphalt. And that is just to ensure that we get out of the warranty period with the contractor. And if we have to dig into the road for whatever reason, we're not digging into surface asphalt and degrading the asset there from the roadway. And then the third one is the expansion of the Union Street parking lot for Public Works. I don't know if anybody's been by there, but we are commandeering grass space and parking on the adjacent roadway. To speak of parking issues, we do have a challenge at Public Works, and I'm not sure that all of this council will recall, but we did increase Public Works staff a few years ago. And with that, obviously, now we have some challenges fitting them all into the parking lot. So that's part of this exercise, as well as some maintenance there at the yard, on the lower yard at Howard Street there. So I think with that, Clayton and I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Questions? Councillor Schmidt.
Going back to the reserve fund, we had that big battle at budget time, we all remember. What's the balance in reserve fund today, and how much are you taking 70 out of that? So what does that leave us with?
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwint. So I think obviously we're going to have a good discussion through the 2025 budget cycle. That'll be an important piece. I appreciate that reserves, and there is a report coming forward from finance in Q3, I believe it is, or early Q4, speaking specifically to the reserves. I think that there is only a couple of $100,000 available in that reserve. So this would be $70,000 coming out of that 200,000 available right now. Reserve is a bit of a misnomer, appreciate. And I think we explained that at previous budget, that what pretty much is in is out with our infrastructure reserve fund. That's the unfortunate part. So I think broader discussion to have going forward and how we're going to look to address that. And staff are working on that report too and coming forward for council consideration. And of course, we'll wrestle that to the ground for 2025's budget cycle.
So knowing that, and with our public works being crowded and needing more space and a long-term plan needed for that, does it make sense to pave that parking lot, expand it, or would it make more sense to just make it a gravel lot for the additional spaces until we have a longer-term plan?
Yeah, and through you, Mayor Shantz, to Councillor Schwinn, I mean, it's a discussion piece. I think we are looking for space. The question is going to become the build. When do we execute on building the facility for the long term? We have a number of facilities. Obviously, we've expanded beyond what we have now. We're renting space, so we're expending dollars on that. So I think it is important that we look to figure out what that long-term plan is and when we execute. So currently, in the ground floor, we'll say looking for land first. We appreciate that builds aren't cheap. We think this is value money needed now because we don't know if this is a 10-year plan. And if it is, it's value money to spend that now, as opposed to deal with gravel that's going to now bleed out and touch up and wash out. And we have that whole issue of maintenance and going forward. So we think, staff believe that it is value because we don't think that we're going to have funding, for one, to execute on what we truly need to consolidate some form of a facility no less than 5. So we're 5 to 10 for sure, right? So I think in that realm, it's reasonable. It's a reasonable expenditure in staff's opinion, but that's certainly for council to discuss.
Councillor Cadeau.
Thanks, Mayor. Through you to Director Pepe. $70,000, I'm not good with math, is roughly 15%. Can you provide some insight as to why it's so much higher over the budgeted amount?
Yeah, I believe it's through Mayor Shantz to Councillor Cadeau. I believe it's around 12% when we did the math on our end for the overage. But we've been really pretty good through COVID in our estimates. Unfortunately, I think this is just one of those we were a bit light. I think all in all, we feel that it is still worthwhile work. It's important work to do. It is packaged as one, and at the end of the day, you know, there's individual budget items. So I think if we were there, we were probably a little bit over on everything, or a little bit, under on everything, unfortunately. I think that there's no real, we can't pin it to something and say, oh, this is where we missed the boat on. I would like to say that staff has been wonderful through COVID, and I can share with other municipalities having large deficits to be deal with. We've been fortunate in Woolwich through the COVID years to not have that. So this is unfortunately one of those situations we'll look to do better on going forward, obviously.
A lot of our infrastructure tenders come out early in the year. Is this an anomaly?
You may, Sean, it's possible. We know that there's not a ton of work out there. So there are some hungry contractors out there. So I don't know. I wish I could pin it on and say, yeah, it's a late tender and that's why. I don't think I could say that wholeheartedly at all. But again, competitive. We're very happy with Capital. Obviously, we worked with them in the past. They are a good paver. So we're very comfortable with who is the low bidder on this project.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, there is a motion. Someone like to move it, Councillor Cadeau, seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I've got my papers all mixed up now. Here we go. Back to 5.1. Zone change application, Hardwood Forests Recreational Limited, and I will call on Senior Planner Stephen Dykstra. Mr. Dykstra.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Shantz and Council. I have a recommendation report here for this application, Hardwood Forest, the address being 1115 King Street. Just in summary, the idea here is that there's some land for the larger property. There's a small portion at the northeast side that's within the settlement boundary areas. And the lands are currently zoned agriculture. They are within the designation industrial. And the idea here, and we're recommending for approval, is that those lands be zoned for employment purposes. The rest of the lands will stay as agriculture, but they also require a special site-specific provisions because the lands are a little bit smaller and don't have the frontage to meet the zoning bylaw regulations. So the site-specific will allow for a smaller acreage and also a shorter frontage on that. That's essentially what this report is recommending.
Okay, thank you. Richard Kelly-Ritz of GSP Group is here to answer any questions as well. Are there any questions from council? No. Seeing none, there is a motion here to approve. Someone like to move it, Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Cadeau. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Our next one is zone change application ZC 11/20/23, and I will call on Mr. Dykstra again. I don't have a description here, so it's all yours.
That's quite all right. So this one is for the property is at 2344 New Jerusalem, and it is essentially to add another use for in an agricultural zone. It's a smaller property, and the previous site-specific zone allowed, I believe, for some additional uses that aren't typically agriculture, and this one adds on to that. It's for an e-repair. We've also defined what e-repair is, and actually Jeremiah is here to he can attest to what he does there, but essentially it is for circuits and small electrical components to be repaired in this structure. The structure has been there for a very long time and it's had multiple uses over the years. This is simply to add an additional use in already a well-used, multi-use building that's been there for a long time. So,
okay, thank you. Are there any questions? No, seeing none, would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Bryant, Councillor Grant, all those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And now our final report, removal of holding provision on 15 Weymouth Street. And Ms. Freeze, I think you're on for this one.
Yep, so this is probably the simplest of all the reports that we'll have tonight, but it's just a holding removal and it's for the Birdland Southwood 4 development. The holding was in place until the developer could either do a traffic study or constructed the north-south road, Red Bud Road. So the road has now been constructed, and you'll also notice in your recommendation that the bylaw was not to come into effect until traffic control was installed, which has now been done, and the plan was registered. And I've just received some information today from Douglas Stewart, who's here, that the plan has now been registered. So very simple application for a holding removal at this point.
Okay, and are there any questions? Councillor Cadeau.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Director Freeze. Do we know when that road will be open to through traffic from Listowel Road to Whippoorwill?
Yeah, so I can
Mr. Stewart.
ask Douglas to speak to that if he's able to.
Welcome.
Thank you. It will be completed open tomorrow or the next day thereafter. We've spoken with staff. They've accepted the street is constructed the way it's supposed to be. We will remove the obstruction, which will prevent that, and that'll be done to either tomorrow, Thursday, or Friday.
As soon as we say yes, right?
Soon as you, well, actually, it isn't dependent on what council decides. It's the part of the process. The fact that the plan was registered is it's now a street and the construction has been finalized.
Thank you. Anyone else? Another question? No, you're good. You're moving it and seconded by Councillor Grant. All those in favor? Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right. Motion that the following bylaws in the hands of the clerk be read a first, second, third time and finally passed, and that they be numbered as bylaws number 45-2024 to 49-2024, and that they be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with a corporate seal. Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Bryant. All those in favor, and that is carried. And that brings us to the end of the meeting, unless Deputy Clerk has something else we should add. No? Okay. Motion to adjourn to meet again in regular session on August 27th, 2024. Councillor Cadeau, Councillor Bryant, all those in favor. And that is carried. Thank you. And in closing, council would like to thank all who participated, attended, or tuned in to the meeting tonight. Council, please stay connected on Zoom until the live stream has stopped. And good night and enjoy the rest of the summer.